My name is Mink. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of the Jewish Farmer Network. We are a nonprofit organization that works to mobilize Jewish wisdom to build a more just and regenerative food system for all. And we do this by empowering modern Jewish agrarians with the resources and the community to build deep cultural identity at the intersection of vocation and tradition. I am currently located on Korchog land on the east end of Long Island. And I work on a farm called Trieber Farms, which is not a Jewish farm, but is a wonderful no-till farm. The Jewish tradition at its core is an agrarian tradition. There is this idea that a Jew, what makes a person Jewish is nothing more than the Jewish calendar. So it is the way that we walk through the world and the way that we move through time. And the Jewish calendar, the Jewish holidays, the way that we move through time is a blueprint of the agricultural cycles of the world. So when we move through time, when we mark our seasons with intentionality, it lends great and deep meaning to our work with the land. So the Jewish tradition is filled with wisdom about how to do agriculture in a way that ensures care for self, for community, and for others. And being able to connect our desires for a just food system, our pursuit of a just food system, a pursuit of equity, a pursuit of food justice, to be able to root that in our own tradition, in our own spirituality, in our own lineage, in our own culture, is really healing for the trauma that our people have experienced with our relationship with the land. So by giving Jewish farmers the resources and the community that they need to connect their work as modern Jewish farmers, to connect their story as modern Jewish farmers to the story of the Jewish people as a people of the land. We empower them to build this connection, to deepen spiritually into their work, and to find a community of people that are doing the same. And we also are welcoming all aspects of their identity into the room together. So the Jewish tradition is one that has deep reverence for the land as something that gives to us. That we don't, there's a saying that if you eat something without saying a blessing, it is as though you've stolen it. So we set up this system that is rooted in deep gratitude, and also that gratitude manifests in reciprocity. So the land gives to us and we give back to the land. And we know that just like we need to rest every 7 days on the Sabbath, so too does the land need a sabbatical, a SHMITA, every 7 years. And this is both practical and spiritual, which I think is what makes it so appealing to modern agrarians. One of the greatest challenges facing young farmers today who are interested in engaging in regenerative farming, I would say, is land access. And this is like a fairly practical challenge. Land is really expensive, and our generation hasn't acquired wealth in the same way that generations before us have. And it's really hard to find land access. And something that there are a lot of amazing organizations that are working on making lands commons, and there are a lot of amazing resources for getting resources to purchase land, but it's a really challenging moment to be someone who is pursuing agriculture. So it's like a really practical challenge. And I think there is also like a cultural challenge, especially for the farmers in the Jewish community. And that's kind of why we exist, because there is like a lot of like stigma against, and it's like, this is rooted in like internalized anti-Semitic propaganda, but there's a lot of like stigma about being farmers, that like, oh, this isn't something that Jewish people do. or this isn't, like Jews don't do that. When we talk about our work, I often hear back, "Oh, Jewish farmer, isn't that an oxymoron?" And the truth of the matter is that our tradition is an agrarian tradition. Our people of the land, are agrarian people, people who is like rooted in a deep relationship with the land. And a challenge that a lot of young farmers in our community face is that when they go home to their families, to their Jewish communities, and they say, "Oh, I want to be a farmer," what they hear back is, "Oh, we don't do that." And so there's this big challenge. It's a cognitive challenge. It's a perceptive challenge of like how we see ourselves as a people, because the modern culture has come to see us as, we're doctors and we're lawyers and we're this and we're that, but we have forgotten the old story of who we are. So we are approaching this challenge of this like dissonance between our identity as a Jewish people and our core Jewish identity as an agrarian people, and trying to help people weave the story back together. There is this phrase like Am Haaretz, like people of the land, that means like an ignoramus, like someone who is maybe illiterate, but it literally means a people of the land. But it's understanding, the cultural understanding of it is someone who is illiterate or ignorant. And so it's like this really interesting prejudice, and a lot of the reasons why our people have moved away from a relationship with the land is because we have a history, especially for Ashkenazi Jews. This is not true of all Jews, but for my ancestors who were Jews in Eastern Europe, we couldn't own land. We were barred from owning land. And then also in Christian dominant cultures, money handling was seen as dirty work. And so Jews were forced to do that work. They're like, "Oh, well, let the Jews do the dirty work because we don't want to touch money. We don't want to be money handlers because we see that as dirty." And so we became the money lenders and the money handlers, and we had to find other sorts of work because we couldn't own land and we couldn't enact our core cultural expression of being farmers and shepherds and orchardists, because also the landscapes that we were in were also just not what our culture was built around. It's very interesting the way that our culture has had to adapt to new and foreign landscapes. For example, there in the Passover Seder, in America, there's the Seder is an ordered meal. There are many. Seder literally means like order. So there are many different parts of it before you even get to the eating and after the eating. And one of those parts, one of the pieces of that experience is maror, which in this country, maror, it means a bitter herb. And in this country, for most Ashkenazi Jews, what we use is horseradish. But originally, if you look at the text and what it says it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be a green growing thing that when you break off the leaf, it has a white sap. It's a bitter green that has a white sap. That's like a lettuce. But when specifically my ancestors in Eastern Europe, when they were trying to practice the Passover Seder, the only thing that was green and growing at that time of year was horseradish. So they used horseradish. And so horseradish has become synonymous with maror, even though it could be lettuces of all types. So it's like really interesting the way that it has adapted to different landscapes. The Jewish Farmer Network includes a really vast diversity of individuals, both in terms of Jewish identity and practice and in terms of agricultural identity and practice. But we believe that the core Jewish agricultural ethic is one that supports a transformation away from industrial agriculture and towards local small farms, regenerative farms, and cooperatives, because there's really no, well, maybe there is, I don't know. It's hard to imagine a way of enacting and fulfilling and um, embodying the full Jewish agricultural ethic. It's hard to imagine enacting that on an industrial scale because it requires such intentional care for the earth. There is this idea that like bal tashchit, that you shouldn't waste, right? We shouldn't be wasteful of things, and like we shouldn't even be like cutting down trees. Like, ugh, what like God forbid you should cut down a tree. And there is just like this deep, deep, deep need to be in really careful, observational, intentional relationship with the earth. So I mentioned the Shemitah, the seventh year, where we let the land rest. And letting the land rest is an amazing thing unto itself. It's wildly regenerative for soils and microbial communities and everyone who lives in the soil. But it also facilitates a moment of intentional observation of our land. We can see where the low points are. We can see where the fertile points are because we're not pushing and imposing our vision of the land onto it, but rather sitting back and saying, how can I sit at the feet of the earth as my greatest teacher? How can I learn how to farm this land, not from books, but from the wisdom of this land itself? And so to be in a relationship with land that is punctuated by moments of rest like that, it's hard to imagine that not eliciting a relationship with land that is grounded in deep care and respect for it. Another big part of Shemitah, the sabbatical year that comes every seventh year, is also this idea of taking down fences. So everything becomes a commons in the seventh year. Everyone is welcome into your land. I can graze on yours and you can graze on mine. And in order to survive in a year where you're not tilling the soil and you're letting the land rest, what do you have to do? You have to invest in perennials. You have to invest in food preservation and community care, because we're all going to get through this year of not cultivating the soil together. So it's this moment where everybody is taken care of. Everyone is together in this release, and everybody, meaning ourselves and the land and the poor and the widow and the stranger, who are people who are explicitly identified as folks that we need to care for in our agricultural systems. And investing in perennials and investing in community care is like exactly what we're looking for in our move towards more regenerative, small scale, local agriculture that puts marginalized people and vulnerable people and the health of our soils at the center. What's really important about giving people access to their own agricultural wisdom traditions is that it helps people to not be appropriators of other people's traditions. So a lot of people are really excited about concepts like permaculture, but we know that permaculture is an amalgamation of Aboriginal indigenous wisdom that was bottled by two white men and sold for a profit. And so how can we find the wisdom of our tradition and bring it into the fore? Because when we show up authentically as ourselves, grounded in our own people's relationship with land, grounded in the wisdom of our own ancestors, we can show up as better allies for the rest of the community. The Jewish Farmer Network is a really vast and diverse community. We engage people across the United States and also abroad. And the way that we connect is mostly virtually, but a really important and exciting piece of our work is our annual conference where folks come together from last year, 6 countries and 35 states. So it's really exciting for all of us to be together and to be together in our unity and our multiplicity simultaneously. We offer all sorts of online classes and opportunities to connect, um, from understanding Jewish agricultural time and the Jewish agricultural calendar towards all the way to a study group that investigates the Jewish relationship with land through history. And what we hear over and over again from members of our community, most of whom before they found us were really disillusioned with the Jewish tradition, they feel that they have found home with us, that they have found a community finally that reflects every piece of their identity. And this is such a liberating feeling for people who didn't even realize that they felt before that they were split at the root. They had to keep one piece of their identity here and another piece of their identity over here. And it's really such a blessing to be able to do this like really holy work of connecting people. And I just want to encourage everyone to look into and explore your own agricultural lineages, to explore the wisdom of your ancestors and see where it comes from. And um, if you're exploring the wisdom of someone else's ancestors, show up in deep reverence and respect, and um, as an observer and appreciator, and give attribution. Um, and something I had said earlier, something about blessing your food is a really important piece of the Jewish agricultural and food ethic. And there's this Kabbalistic notion that there's like this like energetic flow through many um, levels of like the metaphysical world. And so the flow of energy is coming all the way down to ripen your fruit. And if you don't bless your food before you take that bite, it doesn't continue the cycle. So I want to encourage people to, when you're eating food, especially when you're harvesting food straight from the earth, to take a minute, take a moment, and offer up gratitude to whatever higher power, to the microbes, to the soil, to the many hands that touched it and made it, help it make its way to you.